Hey guys, Mr. Backerberg here. In this video, we're going to look at evaluating a limit from calculus. So in calculus, one really important type of limit is called a difference quotient. So we've got a difference quotient in front of us where we've got f of x plus h minus f of x all over h, and we're looking at that limit as h is approaching 0. Now, when we're looking at the limit of a difference quotient, we can't just direct substitute 0 in for the h, because that's going to give us that 0 over 0 indeterminate form. So we're going to have to do some algebra to work on simplifying some things down and maybe getting some things to cancel out in order to actually evaluate this limit. So in this first example, we're going to look at the function f of x equals x squared minus 1, and we're going to do this difference quotient here, f of 3 plus h minus f of 3 all over h, and we're going to do that limit as h is approaching 0. So the first thing we have to do is try to figure out what this function notation is telling us to do. So this f of 3 plus h means in our function f, where the x is, we're supposed to plug in 3 plus h. So our function is x squared minus 1. So where that x is, I'm supposed to plug in the 3 plus h, and that gets a squared on it, but then this is still minus 1. So that's the first piece of this difference quotient, minus, now I'm supposed to do f of 3. So for that x, we're just going to plug in 3. So this is going to be 3 squared minus 1, and this is all being divided by h. And we're trying to evaluate this limit as h is approaching 0. But again, like I said before, we can't just direct substitute 0 in for h because that would give us the indeterminate form. So we have to try to simplify this down. The back end of that numerator should be fairly easy for us to simplify down. 3 squared is just 9, and if I subtract 1 from that, that's going to be 8. So the back end is going to say minus 8. The front end, though, might be a little trickier. With this 3 plus h squared, that really means that we're taking 3 plus h and multiplying by another 3 plus h. So if we FOIL that out, 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times h is plus 3h. h times 3 is another 3h. And then h times h is h squared. But then I still have this minus 1 in there. And this is all still over h. Now I want to work on simplifying some things down and maybe rearranging things a little bit. So on top, as I look at combining some of those like terms, I've got h squared. 3h and 3h is going to give me 6h. On the back end, with that negative 1 and that negative 8, that's going to be negative 9. And if I combine that with the 9 in the front, those are going to cancel each other out. And we've still got this denominator of h. But now there's actually a little bit of factoring that we can do on top. We could take out a GCF of h, which would leave me with h plus 6 over h. And then I notice that those h's are going to cancel each other out, so we've got just h plus 6. Now we can't forget that we're trying to do this limit as h is approaching 0. But I just did a whole bunch of algebra in the hopes that now I'm going to be able to direct substitute that 0 in for h. So if I plug in 0 for that h, the limit I get is just 6. Checking out this example, we want to look at the function 2x squared plus 1, and we want to do the difference quotient f of 2 plus h minus f of 2 over h, and we want to do that limit as h is approaching 0. Again, we can't just plug 0 in because that would give us the indeterminate form, so we have to go through and do all the algebra to try to simplify this down. So that first piece of function notation says that I'm supposed to take the x that's in that function and replace it with 2 plus h. So this would be 2 times 2 plus h squared plus 1 minus f of 2 means I'm supposed to plug in 2 for that x value. So 2 times 2 squared plus 1. This is all over h, and we're still trying to do that limit. Now I'm going to start on the back end of that numerator. 2 squared is 4. Times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So we've got minus 9 on the back end there. If we look at FOILing out that 2 plus h squared, well, 2 plus h times another 2 plus h. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times h is plus 2h. H times 2 is another 2h, and then h times h is h squared. But all of that is getting multiplied by that 2 that's in front of that. So if I distribute that 2 through, that's going to be 8 plus 4h plus 4h plus 2h squared. I'm going to combine some like terms right away. So I'm going to have 2h squared plus 8h plus 8. But then I still have this other plus 1 that I haven't used yet, and this is all still being divided by h. I want to go through and combine some more things, because in the middle I see this plus 8 and this plus 1, which gives me 9, which is going to cancel out with that minus 9 on the back end. So then the numerator just says 2h squared plus 8h, and this is being divided by h. If I take out an h on top, that's going to give me 2h plus 8 over h. And then that h that I just took out is going to cancel out with that h from the bottom. So now we're just left with 2h plus 8, and we're going to do this limit as h is approaching 0. So now that I went through and did all of that algebra, I should be able to direct substitute 0 in for that h value. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 8, we get a limit of just 8 this time. That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching.